Step away from the vegetables, sir. Put the crate on the ground and keep your hands where I can see them. That is a real sentence. That was said to me, by a man with a gun. It was 9:15 p.m. on a Tuesday, the kind of humid mid-July evening where the air feels like it's trying to hug you to death. I was standing in my own driveway, illuminated by the strobe light disco of a police cruiser parked halfway on my lawn. The red and blue lights were bouncing off the vinyl siding of my house, making my meticulously weeded flower beds look like a crime scene from a particularly low-budget episode of CSI Suburbia. I looked at the police officer. He looked at me. He was young, maybe 25, streetbar, with a jawline that suggested he did CrossFit, and eyes that suggested he was currently questioning every life choice that had led him to this specific moment. His name tag read Officer Miller. His hand wasn't on his holster, which was a plus, but it was hovering near his belt in that I am prepared for this zucchini-to-turn-violent sort of way. I looked down at the crate in my hands. It was a rustic, wooden thing, very farmhouse chic, filled to the brim with acorn squash. Beautiful squash. The kind of squash that wins ribbons at the county fair. "Officer," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "it's a squash. It's an heirloom Table Queen acorn squash. It has a nutty flavor profile and roasts beautifully with a little brown sugar. It is not a weapon." "I didn't say it was a weapon, sir," Officer Miller said, his voice tired. "I said put it down. We have a report of illicit commercial activity in a residential zone. Unauthorized distribution of goods." I blinked. Illicit commercial activity? I'm giving vegetables to my neighbor, Gary. Gary has high cholesterol. Gary needs fiber. This is a humanitarian mission. Does Gary pay you for the vegetables? No, nobody pays me. That's the point. It's free. It's the opposite of commerce. It's anti-capitalist produce. Officer Miller sighed, finally taking his hand off his belt and rubbing his temples. He walked up the driveway, his boots crunching on the gravel. He shined his flashlight into the crate, inspecting the squash as if searching for hidden cocaine, or perhaps a tiny, illegal immigrant hiding between the gourds. "Look," Miller said, lowering his voice, "we got a call, an anonymous tip. The caller stated that you are operating an unlicensed farm stand and distributing agricultural products in a Zone R1 residential area without a permit, creating a traffic hazard and devaluing local property aesthetics." I didn't need to ask who the caller was. I knew. I looked past Officer Miller across the street to the house with the pristine, chemically green lawn and the flag that was taken down at sunset with military precision. The blinds in the living room window twitched, just a fraction of an inch. Brenda. Brenda was the president of the Homeowners Association, although our neighborhood wasn't technically an HOA. She just acted like it was. She was a woman who viewed a dandelion as a personal insult and considered anyone parking a pickup truck in their own driveway to be a sign of societal collapse. "Let me guess," I said, "Fool," nodding toward the twitching blinds. The caller expressed concern about the character of the neighborhood? "I can't disclose the caller, sir," Miller said. "But, yeah, basically." "Officer, come with me." "Sir, I need you to stay by the vehicle." "Just walk 10 feet, please. I need you to see the scope of the problem so you understand why I am standing in the dark holding 20 pounds of squash." Miller hesitated, then signaled for me to lead the way. We walked around to the side of my house, past the AC unit humming loudly in the heat, and into the backyard. I flipped the switch on the floodlights. Officer Miller stopped. His mouth opened slightly. "Mother of God," he whispered. It was magnificent. It was terrifying. It was a jungle. When I bought this house 3 years ago, I was a burned-out software engineer looking for a tactile hobby. I wanted to touch grass. I wanted to disconnect from the cloud and connect with the earth. I watched a few YouTube videos on raised beds. I bought some seeds. I evidently have a superpower. My superpower is that I cannot kill plants. I can only make them thrive with a terrifying, aggressive vitality that defies the laws of botany. My quarter-acre backyard was no longer a yard. It was a calorie factory. Tomato plants, staked 8 feet high, formed a dense green wall loaded with red, purple, and yellow fruit. Zucchini leaves the size of trash can lids formed a canopy that blocked out the moon. There were rows of kale that looked strong enough to beat you up in a dark alley. Pumpkin vines snaked across the grass like green pythons, strangling the patio furniture. "I didn't mean for this to happen," I said, gesturing helplessly at the wall of vegetation. "I planted 3 zucchini seeds, officer. 3. Do you know how much zucchini 3 plants produce? It's exponential. It's a geometric progression of green squash. If I don't pick them every 6 hours, they grow to the size of baseball bats. I have 400 pounds of tomatoes. I have peppers coming out of my ears. I am drowning in vitamins." Miller walked over to a cucumber trellis that was sagging under the weight of the harvest. He touched a cucumber, tentatively. "So you're selling this?" "No, I can't eat it all. I'm a single man, Miller. Do you know what happens to the human digestive tract if you eat 5 pounds of kale a day? It's not pretty. I have to give it away. I'm trying to offload it on neighbors, co-workers, the mailman. I put a box on the curb this morning with a sign that said, 'Please take me.' And Brenda called the city on me for illegal dumping." Miller chuckled. He actually chuckled. He looked back at the house across the street. "Okay," he said. "I get it. You got a green thumb. But here's the deal. You can't have people stopping by at all hours to pick up food. Technically, if you're distributing this much volume, the city considers it a commercial enterprise, even if no money changes hands. You're undermining the local market economy, or some such nonsense. It's an obscure ordinance, but if she pushes it, you're in trouble." "So what do I do?" I asked, pleading. "Let it rot. That's a sin, isn't it? Wasting food?" "I'm just saying," Miller said, hitching up his belt. "Keep it low profile. No signs, no traffic, and maybe get a permit if you're going to move this much weight. Otherwise, next time it won't be me. It'll be code enforcement. And those guys? They don't have a sense of humor. They just have clipboards and a quota." He started walking back to the car. Then he stopped and turned around. "Hey, that corn in the back corner, is that Silver Queen?" "Peaches and cream," I said. "Ready to harvest on Thursday." Miller nodded solemnly. "If a bag of that accidentally fell into my trunk, I wouldn't write a report about it." 10 minutes later, the blue lights faded into the distance. I was left standing in the dark, holding a bag of bribe corn, staring at Brenda's house. The blinds were still open. She was watching. I waved. A slow, sarcastic wave. The blinds snapped shut. This wasn't over. The police were just the opening act. I knew Brenda. She wouldn't stop until my garden was paved over and replaced with regulation turf grass and a tasteful, non-edible shrub. I walked back into my kitchen and dropped the crate of squash on the counter. It landed with a heavy thud. The kitchen smelled like basil and dirt, the smell of victory, usually. Tonight, it smelled like impending litigation. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, popped the cap, and looked at the harvest schedule on my whiteboard. Tomorrow, harvest 40 pounds zucchini. Harvest 20 pounds jalapenos. Harvest 60 pounds beefsteak, tomatoes. I took a long drink. "Okay, Brenda," I said to the empty room. "You want to play zoning laws? Let's play zoning laws." I didn't sleep well that night. I dreamed I was being chased by a giant eggplant wearing a sash that said, HOA compliant. The next morning, the hammer dropped. I was drinking my coffee, staring out the window at the dew glistening on my magnificent illegal crops, when a white sedan with the city seal on the door pulled up. A man in a short-sleeved button-down shirt and a tie that stopped 3 inches above his belt buckle got out. He wasn't carrying a gun. He was carrying something far more dangerous, a tape measure. He walked to the edge of my property. He measured the distance from the curb to the first row of peppers. He took a photo. He walked to the sidewalk. He took a photo of the free veggies sign I had foolishly left leaning against the garage. Even though I had taken it down, its mere presence was apparently evidence of intent. He walked up to my front door and taped a piece of neon orange paper to the wood. He didn't knock, he just taped it, smoothed it down with the palm of his hand, and walked away. I opened the door before he was back in his car. "Excuse me," I shouted. "Can I help you?" He turned. He had the dead eyes of a shark that had been forced to file paperwork for eternity. "Mr. David Reynolds?" "Yes." "You've been served a cease and desist order regarding the operation of an unauthorized agricultural distribution hub in a Zone R1 residential district. You have 48 hours to cease all cultivation and distribution activities, or you will be fined $5,000 per day." "Cease cultivation?" I stepped out onto the porch, coffee mug trembling in my hand. "You mean, stop growing?" "The ordinance states that excessive cultivation for the purpose of distribution constitutes a commercial variance. You are over the limit for personal consumption, Mr. Reynolds. By a lot. Based on the aerial photography we pulled from Google Earth, you are operating a small farm." "Google Earth?" "You have 48 hours to remove the non-compliant biomass or prove that the produce is solely for personal use." "How do I prove that? Do you want to watch me eat 100 pounds of squash? I'll do it. I'll die, but I'll do it." "That's not my department," he said, getting into his car. "You can file an appeal at City Hall, window 4. Have a nice day." He drove off. I ripped the orange paper off the door. It was heavy stock. Expensive. Violation of Municipal Code 14. B. 2. Use of residential property for commercial agriculture. Evidence. Visual confirmation of crop density exceeding recreational limits. Witness testimony regarding transaction of goods. C. Incident Report 88 Alpha. "Recreational limits," I muttered. "Since when is gardening a controlled substance?" I looked at the garden. The sun was hitting the tomatoes, and they looked glorious. They were innocent. They didn't know they were felons. I wasn't going to destroy them. I wasn't going to let them rot. And I certainly wasn't going to let Brenda win. I showered, put on my most respectable "I am a sane taxpayer" button-down shirt, and drove to City Hall. City Hall smelled exactly like I expected. Floor wax, old coffee, and the crushing weight of despair. I took a number. Number 47. The digital display above the counter read 12. I waited 3 hours. I watched a man try to register a ferret as a service animal. I watched a woman cry about a fence height variance. Finally, my number was called. Window 4 was manned by a woman named Dolores. Dolores had gray hair cut in a style that suggested she had given up on joy around 1996. She wore reading glasses on a chain and looked at me over the top of them. "Name?" "Dave Reynolds. I'm here about a zoning violation, the vegetable thing." Dolores sighed. She typed something into her computer. Click, 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 click. "Ah, the zucchini man. I prefer urban agriculturalist, but yes. Look, Dolores, can I call you Dolores? There's been a mistake. I'm not selling anything. I'm a software engineer. This is just a hobby that got out of hand. I'm not a farm." "Mr. Reynolds," Dolores said, turning the screen slightly so I couldn't see it, which was a power move. "The code is clear. Any cultivation that exceeds the caloric needs of the household by more than 500% is classified as commercial potential." "You are disrupting the market." "Disrupting the market? The market is Safeway. They charge $2 for a bruised pepper. I'm giving people premium organic produce for free." "Exactly," Dolores said, pointing a manicured finger at me. "Price dumping. Predatory pricing. By offering goods at zero cost, you are undercutting licensed local businesses. It's anti-competitive behavior." I stared at her. My brain was doing cartwheels trying to process the logic. "So, let me get this straight. If I charge money, I'm breaking the law because I don't have a business license. If I don't charge money, I'm breaking the law because I'm undercutting the market. So the only legal option is to not grow food? Or eat it all yourself," Dolores said unhelpfully. "Or preserve it. Do you can?" "Do I can, Dolores? I have 48 jars of salsa in my pantry. I have pickled everything that can be pickled. I pickled a watermelon rind yesterday just to see if I could. I'm out of jars. I'm out of shelf space." "Then you must cease operations. You have until tomorrow at 5 p.m. to clear the yard of the excessive biomass." "Biomass," I repeated. "You're calling my prize-winning eggplants biomass." "Next," Dolores shouted. looking past me to a guy holding a blueprint for a deck. I stood my ground. What if I donate it? Officially? Dolores paused. She looked back at me. Donate it to whom? A charity, a soup kitchen, the homeless shelter downtown. If I give it to a registered 501c3, it's a charitable contribution, not a commercial distribution. Right? Dolores narrowed her eyes. She scrolled through a document on her screen. She squinted. Tohon. She scrolled back up. Technically, she dragged the word out. Technically, charitable donations are exempt from the commercial distribution clause if the transport is conducted by the charitable entity or if the donor has a conveyance permit. I have a Honda Civic, I said. It conveys things. And you can't have the public coming to your house. That's the traffic violation. You have to take it to them. Fine, I'll drive it there. So, if I take it to the shelter, I'm legal? Dolores looked disappointed. She wanted to fine me. I could feel it. If you transport it directly to a registered non-profit and no transactions occur on your residential property, the city cannot currently stop you. However, you are still on the watch list. One person stops by your house to pick up a tomato and we drop the hammer. $5,000. Understood, I said, backing away before she could change her mind. Thank you, Dolores. You've been bureaucratic. I walked out of City Hall into the blinding sunlight. I had a loophole. I wasn't a farmer. I was a philanthropist. I got into my car and checked my phone. It was 2 p.m. The harvest was waiting. If they wanted me to clear the biomass, I was going to clear it. I was going to clear all of it. I drove home, my mind racing. I needed crates. I needed boxes. I needed to harvest every single ripe vegetable on my property and move it off-site before Brenda could claim I was running a grocery store. I pulled into my driveway. Brenda was in her front yard, watering her petunias with a hose nozzle set to mist. She watched me get out of the car. "Afternoon, Dave," she called out. Her voice was sweet, like poisoned honey. "Did you get everything sorted downtown?" "Sure did, Brenda," I shouted back, unlocking my front door. "Just doing some landscaping. Don't worry, the neighborhood will be safe from the scourge of vitamins soon enough." She smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "That's good to hear. We all just want what's best for property values." "Oh, absolutely," I muttered as I stepped inside. "Property values." I went to the garage and grabbed every plastic bin I owned. Laundry baskets, storage totes, the recycling bin. Operation Cornucopia was a go. I spent the next 6 hours in a frenzy. I was a machine. I tore through the tomato rows, filling basket after basket. I waded into the squash patch, wrestling the prickly vines. I snapped cucumbers off the trellis with the speed of a martial artist. By 8 p.m., my living room looked like a farmer's market had exploded. There were piles of produce everywhere. The smell of earth and green vegetation was overwhelming. I did the math. 150 pounds of zucchini, 200 pounds of tomatoes, 80 pounds of cucumbers, 50 pounds of peppers, 40 pounds of eggplant, 30 pounds of green beans, over 500 pounds of food. There was no way this was fitting in the Civic in one trip. I looked at the clock. The shelter accepted donations until 10 p.m. I had 2 hours to move a quarter ton of vegetables across town, past Brenda's surveillance, without triggering a traffic violation. I loaded the car. The trunk was full. The back seat was full. The passenger seat was full. I had a crate of habaneros buckled into the passenger seat like a spicy toddler. I backed out of the driveway. My car's suspension groaned. I was riding so low the mud flaps were scraping the asphalt. As I rolled past Brenda's house, I saw the flash. She was standing in her window, holding a DSLR camera with a telephoto lens. Click, click. She was documenting the transport. She was going to try to prove I was doing a delivery run for a business. "Joke's on you, Brenda," I whispered, shifting into second gear. "I'm doing the Lord's work." I drove toward downtown, the smell of warm tomatoes filling the car. I felt like a drug runner, but instead of cocaine, I was smuggling beta-carotene. I pulled up to the Second Chance shelter on 4th Street. It was a brick building with peeling paint and a line of men and women waiting outside for the evening meal. I parked in the loading zone. A large man in an apron came out. This was Marcus. I knew Marcus from a previous employer's charity drive. He was 6'4", built like a linebacker, and had a heart of gold wrapped in a layer of cynical exhaustion. He looked at my car. He looked at the suspension. "Dave?" he asked. "Did you move out of your house?" "Marcus, I need help. I have a situation." "What kind of situation?" I popped the trunk. Marcus stared. "That is an aggressive amount of kale, Dave." "It's a superfood, Marcus. I'm saving lives. Just take the crates before the feds show up." Marcus laughed, a deep, booming sound. "Man, we've been serving canned corn for 3 weeks. This is amazing. Fresh, all of it? Picked 3 hours ago. Organic, pesticide-free, spite-fueled." "Spite-fueled? Long story. Can you take it?" "Can I take it, brother? I'll take all of it. Hey, Joey, Big Mike! Get the carts!" 2 guys from the line jumped up to help. We formed a bucket brigade. Crate after crate went from my Civic into the shelter kitchen. "Look at these tomatoes," Big Mike yelled, holding up a beefsteak the size of a human head. "You could eat this like an apple." "Please do," I said, sweating. "Eat it all. Destroy the evidence." As the last crate disappeared into the kitchen, Marcus wiped his hands on his apron. "You're a lifesaver, Dave. Seriously. This is going to feed 200 people for a week. Fresh salad, roasted veg. It makes a difference. Most people donate expired cans of pumpkin pie filling. This is dignity." I felt a lump in my throat. It wasn't just about beating Brenda. It actually felt good. "I'll be back," I promised. "I've got the corn coming in on Thursday." "Bring it on," Marcus said. I drove home feeling lighter. The car handled better. I had won. I had complied with the order. I had removed the biomass. I pulled into my driveway at 9:45 p.m. I walked inside, cracked another beer, and sat down. At 8 a.m. the next morning, there was a knock on the door. It was the process server. The guy with the shark eyes. He handed me another orange paper. "Violation of Code 14C.9, he droned. I looked at the paper. "Violation. Operation of a commercial distribution hub. Details. Subject was observed transporting commercial quantities of goods from the premises. Subject is claiming tax deductions for charitable contributions, which constitutes a commercial financial benefit derived from the use of residential land." My jaw dropped. "Are you kidding me? I can't sell it. I can't give it away." "So, and now I can't donate it because the potential tax write-off counts as profit?" It's a benefit," the guy shrugged. "City considers that income. You're running a farm for tax credits, still a business. You have 24 hours to cease all agricultural activity and remove the production infrastructure." "Production infrastructure?" "The plants, sir. You have to pull the plants up. If they produce, you are in violation." He walked away. I stood there, staring at the paper. They wanted me to kill the garden. They wanted me to rip up the roots, because giving food to homeless people might save me $50 on my taxes next April. Something inside me snapped. It was a quiet snap, like a dry twig stepping on a landmine. I looked at the tomatoes. I looked at the corn, swaying gently in the breeze. I walked back inside. I went to my bookshelf. I pulled down a dusty copy of the Constitution, and then I grabbed my laptop. I started Googling. Zoning exemptions, federal land use laws, RLUIPA. I stopped scrolling. The Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, RLUIPA. Protects individuals, houses of worship, and other religious institutions from discrimination in zoning and landmarking laws. I read further. Zoning laws cannot substantially burden the religious exercise of a person or institution unless there is a compelling government interest. I looked out the window at the acorn squash. If wine could be the blood of Christ, if bread could be the body, why couldn't a zucchini be a vessel of the divine? I wasn't a farmer anymore, and I wasn't just a philanthropist. I grabbed a Sharpie and a napkin. The Order of the Perpetual Harvest, Tenet 1. Thou shalt not waste the bounty. Tenet 2. To compost is to return to the source. Tenet 3. The soil provides, and the city shall not infringe. I picked up the phone. I dialed a number I had saved from when I redid my bathroom. "Hello?" A gruff voice answered. "Tony, it's Dave. I need a job done. Urgent." "Dave, I'm booked out 6 weeks, man." "Tony, I need you to build a structure in my front yard, tomorrow." "What kind of structure?" "A gazebo, but specific." "Specific how?" "I need it to look like a farm stand, but holier. Can you put a steeple on a vegetable stand?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Dave," Tony said slowly, "are you drinking?" "I am starting a church, Tony, and I need an altar for the holy squash." I charge double for rush jobs, and triple for religious craziness." "Deal. Be here at 7 a.m. I hung up. I looked at Brenda's house. "Your move, Satan," I whispered. The next morning at 6:58 a.m., the silence of the suburb was shattered by the beautiful industrial roar of a diesel Ford F350 backing into my driveway. The beep, beep, beep of the truck was the clarion call of the revolution. I walked out to meet Tony, Big Tony. He was a man shaped like a vending machine, wearing work boots that had seen more combat than most tanks, and a tool belt that creaked under the weight of hammers, drills, and what I assumed was a sandwich for later. He climbed out of the truck, slammed the door, and looked at my yard. He looked at the tomato wall. He looked at the squash vines threatening to strangle the mailbox. "Dave," he said, tipping his hat. "Tensang." It was a camouflage hat that just said fish on it. "Tony, thanks for coming on short notice." "You said double time," Tony grunted, pulling a clipboard out of the passenger seat. "And cash. For cash, I'd build a sauna in hell." He walked over to the spot I had staked out in the front yard, right in the center of the lawn, perfectly visible from Brenda's kitchen window. "So," Tony said, chewing on a toothpick. "Walk me through this. You said a gazebo, but on the phone you said shrine." "It's a dual-purpose structure, Tony. Structurally, it's a farm stand. Legally, it's a temple." Tony stared at me. He didn't blink. "Right, a temple. What are the specs?" "I need a raised platform about 4 feet off the ground. Roof needs to be pitched, steep pitch like a chapel, and I need shelving. Reinforced shelving." "Reinforced for what? Statues? Marble?" "Squash, Tony, heavy squash, and pumpkins. I need a shelf that can hold 300 pounds of unsolicited vegetation without bowing. This is where the sacrament will be displayed." Tony scribbled on his clipboard. "Okay, 2x6 framing. Pressure treated for the base. You want cedar for the finish? Cedar smells nice. Keeps the moths away from the, deities." "Cedar is perfect. It's biblical. Solomon used cedar, right?" "I don't know, Dave. I just know it costs $4 a linear foot." He tapped the paper with his pencil. "Now, about this steeple. You want a cross on top?" "No," I said quickly. "We can't infringe on existing trademarks. We need something neutral but spiritual. A spire, just a pointy bit that says, 'I am reaching toward the heavens to maximize photosynthesis.'" "A finial," Tony corrected. "I got a nice copper finial in the truck, left over from a roofing job in Cherry Hill. Looks fancy, very spiritual." "Perfect. Start digging." Tony whistled, and 2 guys I hadn't noticed sitting in the back of the truck hopped out. They looked like they had been awake for 10 minutes. They started unloading lumber. By 8:30 a.m., the sound of circular saws ripping through wood was echoing off the neighboring houses. It was the music of progress. I went inside to draft the holy texts. If I was going to claim religious persecution, I needed a paper trail. I couldn't just say, "I worship zucchini." That's crazy. That gets you a psych evaluation. I needed a creed. I needed a sophisticated theological framework that just happened to require the distribution of free vegetables. I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh notebook. The bylaws of the Congregation of the Perpetual Harvest. Article 1. The belief. We believe that the earth is a gift, and the fruit of the earth is a blessing that must be shared. To hoard the zucchini is a sin. To sell the zucchini is usury. To give the zucchini is grace. Article 2. The sacrament. The Holy Communion shall consist of seasonal produce. In July, we partake of the tomato. In August, the pepper. In October, the pumpkin. The consumption of the sacrament cleanses the body of toxins and the soul of greed. Article 3. The liturgy. Services shall be held whenever the harvest is ready. The priest, me, shall distribute the sacrament to the pilgrims, anyone who is hungry. I read it over. It was solid. It was legally vague enough to work, but specific enough to cover my ass. I printed it out on fancy parchment paper I had left over from my sister's wedding invitations. Then I went to the garage and found some wood paint. I painted a sign, a nice, tasteful sign with gold lettering on a dark green background. The tabernacle of the Green Path services daily. All are welcome to partake in the bounty. No solicitors, no zoning officers. By noon, Tony and his crew were framing the roof. It was coming together fast. It looked like a cross between a bus stop and a very small, very confused cathedral. I saw Brenda come out of her house. She was wearing her "let me speak to the manager" tactical gear. Floral blouse, khaki capris, and oversized sunglasses. She walked to the edge of the sidewalk, but she didn't step onto the property. She knew better. She looked at Tony, who was currently hammering a header beam with the rhythmic violence of a man who hates nails. "Excuse me," Brenda yelled over the saw noise. "Excuse me." Tony ignored her. He was a professional. "Hey," she screamed. Tony stopped hammering. He looked down from the ladder. "Yeah? Do you have a permit for this structure?" Tony looked at me. I was standing on the porch, sipping iced tea. "Hey, Dave," Tony yelled. "Lady wants to know about the permit." "Tell her it's a religious exemption," I shouted back. Section 4, Paragraph 2 of the Federal Land Use Act. No permit required for non-habitable religious structures under 150 square feet. Tony looked back at Brenda. "He says it's a church, lady. God don't need a permit." Brenda's mouth opened and closed like a koi fish. "A church? That is a fruit stand." "It's a tabernacle." "Brenda!" I walked down the driveway holding my parchment paper. "And you are interrupting the construction of a sacred site. Have some respect." "You are insane, David," she hissed. "I called the city. They're coming back. And they're going to tear that monstrosity down and charge you for the demolition." "Let them come," I said, raising my hands to the sky. "The great squash protects its own." She stormed off, dialing furiously on her phone. Tony climbed down the ladder. "You know she's going to bring the heat, right? Code enforcement is going to be all over this." "I'm counting on it, Tony. I'm counting on it." The tabernacle was finished by 5 p.m. It was beautiful. It stood in the center of my lawn, a cedar-shingled beacon of defiance. The copper finial gleamed in the afternoon sun. The shelves were sturdy, reinforced with steel brackets. I paid Tony in cash. He counted it, nodded, and handed me a receipt. Invoice. Construction of altar. Prayer kiosk. Materials and labor. "Pleasure doing business with you, Father Dave," Tony said with a smirk. "If you need a confessional booth, call me. I got some leftover plywood." "I'll keep that in mind. Go with God, Tony." "I'm going to the bar," he said, and drove away. Now came the hard part, the logistics. I called Marcus at the shelter. "Marcus, it's Dave." "Dave, everything okay? You sound breathless." "I'm fine, better than fine. I have a solution to the delivery problem, but I need you to do me a favor." "Okay? I need you to round up some guys. The guys who helped yesterday. Maybe 10 or 15 people. Anyone who wants fresh food." "And do what?" "I need you to bring them to my house. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., for services." "Services?" "Church, Marcus. We're having church." There was a pause. "Dave, are you starting a cult? Because I cannot be involved in a cult. The board of directors is very strict about that." "It's not a cult. It's a legal strategy disguised as a liturgy. If I deliver the food, it's commerce. If you come to me, it's a traffic violation. But if we are gathered for religious worship, and the food is a sacrament, we're protected by the First Amendment." Marcus laughed. It started low and built up to a roar. "You crazy son of a... You're actually doing this?" "I have a gazebo, Marcus. I have a spire. I have a creed. Bring the congregation, and tell them to bring grocery bags. The Lord is providing heavy blessings tomorrow. Sunday morning, 8:45 a.m. The sun was shining, the birds were singing. The humidity was already 90%. I was dressed for the occasion. I didn't have a vestment, so I wore my heavy terry cloth bathrobe over my clothes. It was maroon. It looked regal if you squinted and ignored the coffee stain on the lapel. I held a garden hoe as a staff. I stood in the tabernacle. Behind me, on the reinforced shelves, was the bounty. 50 pounds of shiny purple eggplants, baskets of ruby red tomatoes, stacks of yellow squash, bundles of kale tied with twine. It looked like a Whole Foods had crashed into a nativity scene. At 8:55 a.m., the shelter van pulled up. Marcus was driving. He parked on the street, legal and proper. The doors opened, and 12 men and women stepped out. They looked a bit confused. They were used to lining up for soup, not standing on a lawn in the suburbs while a guy in a bathrobe held a garden hoe. "Welcome!" I boomed, spreading my arms. "Welcome, pilgrims. Come forth to the tabernacle of the green path." Marcus walked up, shaking his head, a grin plastered on his face. "Father Dave, we seek the, guidance." "The nutrient truth," I corrected. "Gather round, on the grass, sit." The group sat on the lawn in a semicircle. They were hesitant at first, looking around at the manicured houses, the staring neighbors. I saw Brenda's curtains part. She was there. She was watching. "Friends," I began, channeling every preacher I'd ever seen in movies, "we are gathered here today because the world is hungry. The world is full of empty calories. The world wants to sell you processed corn syrup and tell you it is food, but the earth says no." "Amen," shouted Big Mike, the guy who loved tomatoes. He was getting into it. "The earth says, here is a cucumber." I held up a cucumber like Simba on Pride Rock. "It asks for nothing. It requires no Visa card. It requires only that you eat it before it gets soft." "Preach!" Marcus yelled, laughing. "The city tells us we cannot share." I pointed the hoe at Brenda's house. "The city says this is commerce. But I ask you, is it commerce to feed the hungry?" "No," the group shouted. "Is it commerce to share the blessings of the soil?" "No." "Then let us partake. Come forward and receive the sacrament." I started handing out the vegetables. It was chaotic and beautiful. People were filling bags with peppers, beans, and corn. "Bless you, brother," I said, handing a woman a bag of okra. "May this fry up crispy and light." "Thank you, Father," she giggled. "Take this melon," I said to a man named Earl. "It is the head of the righteous." We were having a great time. It was the best church service I'd ever been to. No guilt, just groceries. And then the sirens wailed. They didn't just send Officer Miller this time. They sent the cavalry. 2 cruisers and a black SUV marked city code enforcement. The vehicles screeched to a halt, blocking the street. Doors flew open. Brenda came running out of her house, pointing. "There, see, I told you, he's got a commune. He's running a homeless camp in his front yard." The police officers approached slowly. One was Miller, thank God, but the other was a sergeant, Sergeant Kowalski. He looked like a fire hydrant that had learned to walk. Behind them came the man in the tie. The zoning official. He had his clipboard. He looked furious. "Freeze!" Sergeant Kowalski shouted. "Nobody move! Step away from the vegetable stand!" The congregation froze. Big Mike was holding a pumpkin. He looked at the cop, then hugged the pumpkin tighter. "Officer!" I yelled, stepping down from the tabernacle, my robe billowing. "You are interrupting a sacred liturgy." "I'm interrupting an illegal market," Kowalski barked. "Mr. Reynolds, we have a warrant for your arrest for violation of multiple zoning ordinances, operating a business without a license, and disturbing the peace." "Disturbing the peace?" I asked. "We are praying. This is a silent adoration of the legume." "He's lying!" Brenda shrieked, standing behind the safety of the police line. "Look at them. They're shopping. That's a customer." She pointed at Earl. "I'm a pilgrim," Earl shouted back, clutching his melon. The zoning official stepped forward. "Mr. Reynolds, this structure is non-compliant. You did not file a permit. This is an illegal commercial kiosk. We are shutting it down immediately." I planted my hoe in the grass. False. Under the religious land, Use and Institutionalized Persons Act of 2000, religious institutions are exempt from zoning laws that place a substantial burden on their exercise of faith. This structure is a shrine. These people are congregants, and giving them this squash is the central tenet of my faith. The zoning official blinked. Your faith? What faith? You're a software engineer. I have converted, I said solemnly. I am now the high priest of the Order of the Perpetual Harvest. That's not a real religion, Brenda yelled. Who are you to judge? I shot back. What defines a religion, Brenda? A belief system? We have one. A community? Look around you. I gestured to the guys from the shelter. Rituals? We are performing the ritual of the vitamin C right now. Sergeant Kowalski looked at the zoning official. Does he have a point? I don't want a civil rights lawsuit, Frank. Frank, the zoning guy, looked nervous. He can't just make up a religion to dodge a zoning fine? Why not? I asked. People do it for tax breaks all the time. I'm doing it to feed people. Is that so wrong? It's mockery, Brenda screamed. He's mocking the law. I am upholding the higher law, I thundered. The law of photosynthesis. Frank looked at the tabernacle. He looked at the copper finial. He looked at the sacred text I had taped to the post. This is ridiculous, Frank said. Sergeant, cite him. He's operating a food distribution center. D. The church defense won't hold up in court. Kowalski reached for his handcuffs. Mr. Reynolds, turn around. The congregation gasped. Wait! Marcus stepped forward. He towered over the sergeant. Officer, you're going to arrest a man for giving food to the poor on a Sunday morning? I'm arresting him for zoning violations, Kowalski said. But he hesitated. You arrest him, Marcus said, his voice deep and serious. And you arrest all of us, because we are all accomplices in the Great Salad. Big Mike stepped up next to Marcus, then Earl, then the lady with the okra. They formed a wall between me and the cops, a wall of people holding vegetables. This is a sanctuary, Big Mike said. You can't arrest the priest. Kowalski looked at the wall of people. He looked at the neighbors, who had all come out on their porches to watch the show. Phones were recording. This was going on TikTok. I could feel it. #Zucchini Priest was about to trend. Frank, Kowalski said, lowering his cuffs. I am not peppering spraying a bunch of homeless guys holding pumpkins. I'm just not doing it. It's bad optics. Do your job, Brenda shrieked. My job is public safety, Kowalski snapped at her. Nobody is in danger here, except maybe that guy holding the spicy peppers near his eyes. He turned to me. Look, Reynolds, I'm not taking you in today, but you are getting a summons. You tell it to the judge. If the judge says this is a fake church, we come back with bulldozers. You understand? I look forward to my day in court, I said, bowing slightly. May the soil be with you, Sergeant. Kowalski rolled his eyes. Let's go. What? Brenda screamed. You're leaving? He's winning! He's not winning, ma'am. He's just delaying. The police got back in their cars. The zoning official slapped another orange sticker on the post of the tabernacle, pending legal review, and stomped off. As they drove away, the congregation cheered. Big Mike spiked his pumpkin like a football. It smashed, which was tragic, but the enthusiasm was appreciated. We did it! Marcus yelled, slapping me on the back. We won the battle, I said, looking at the smashed pumpkin. But the war is just beginning. We need a lawyer, Marcus. A really weird lawyer. Monday morning, the story broke. I wasn't just the weird neighbor anymore. I was a local folk hero. The Gazette ran the headline, Garden of Eden or Suburban Nuisance. Man claims religious right to distribute zucchini. My inbox exploded. I had emails from libertarians, anarchists, vegans, and 3 actual priests who wanted to debate my theology. But the most important email came from a man named Saul Goodman. Not really, his name was actually Barry, but he had the spirit of a Saul. Subject: I can help. Body: I saw the video of you holding the hoe, pure gold. The city is going to try to crush you on the sincerity of belief test. We need to prove this isn't a prank. We need to double down. Call me. I called Barry. We met at a coffee shop. He wore a suit that was slightly too shiny and smelled like expensive cologne and litigation. Here's the thing, Dave, Barry said, stirring his espresso. The courts don't like to define religion. It gets messy. The First Amendment is broad. If we can prove that your cultivation is a spiritual practice, and that the city is burdening that practice without a compelling interest, we win. So I have to keep acting like a priest? You have to be the priest, Dave. You have to believe. Can you believe? Can you look a judge in the eye and say that the tomato is holy? I thought about the hours I spent weeding, the way the sun felt on my neck, the satisfaction of feeding Marcus's crew. Barry, I said, I believe that the city council is evil, and I believe that fresh food is good. If that's a religion, then I'm a believer. Good enough, Barry grinned. The hearing is on Friday. Wear the robe. Friday came. The city council chambers were packed. It was a circus. Half the room was filled with Brenda's supporters, the Keep Our Neighborhoods Beige coalition. The other half was my crew, the shelter residents. Some college kids who thought this was hilarious, and a few gardeners who just hated zoning laws. I walked in wearing my robe. I had upgraded it. I had sewn a patch of a carrot onto the pocket. Brenda sat in the front row, glaring. The city attorney, a man named Mr. Henderson who looked like he was made of dry parchment, stood up. Your Honor, he said to the magistrate, this is a farce. Mr. Reynolds is mocking the legal system. He created a fake religion 3 days ago to avoid a $500 fine. This is about zoning. It is about commercial distribution in a residential area. We ask for an immediate injunction to demolish the structure and destroy the crops. The magistrate, a stern woman named Judge Judy, no relation, but she had the vibe, looked at me. Mr. Reynolds, your response? Barry nudged me. I stood up. Your Honor, I said, my voice steady. The city claims I am a business, but a business seeks profit. I have lost money on mulch alone. A business seeks to hoard wealth. I seek to give it away. You are distributing goods, Henderson shouted. I am distributing hope, I countered. Is it a crime to feed the hungry? The city says I can't give food to my neighbors. They say I can't drive it to the shelter. They have blocked every path of charity. So I looked to the sky. I looked to the soil. And I realized that the act of growing food is spiritual. It connects us to the earth. To stop me from sharing this harvest is to sever that connection. It is to tell me that my labor must be selfish. I reached into my robe pocket. I pulled out a plastic bag. I present Exhibit A, I said. I dumped the bag onto the defense table. It was a pile of rotten, slimy zucchini mush. The courtroom gasped. This, I said, pointing to the slime, is what the city wants. They forced me to stop distributing, so the food rotted. It went to waste. Is this the compelling government interest, to turn food into garbage? I looked at Brenda. Brenda wants a clean neighborhood. But what is cleaner, a garden that feeds people, or a garbage can full of wasted food? The room was silent. Judge Judy looked at the slime. She looked at Henderson. Mr. Henderson, the judge said, is the city arguing that it is better for the vegetables to rot than to be eaten? No, Your Honor, but the law, the judge interrupted, is not a suicide pact, and it certainly isn't a mandate to waste food in the middle of a recession. She turned to me. Mr. Reynolds, I am skeptical of your theology. It seems, convenient. Revelation often strikes in times of crisis, Your Honor, I said piously. However, she continued, I find that the city's enforcement here is excessive. To classify a donation as a commercial benefit because of a potential tax deduction is, frankly, absurd. She banged her gavel. I am granting a temporary injunction. The tabernacle may remain, provided it is treated as a temporary farm stand, which is permitted under the seasonal holiday exception, usually reserved for Christmas trees, but I'm expanding it to include whatever this is. Squash mas, I suggested. Don't push it, she warned. You may distribute the food, but only during daylight hours, and no chanting after 8 p.m. Objection, Brenda screamed. Overruled, the judge shouted. Case closed. We walked out of the courthouse into a cheer. Marcus was there. He hugged me so hard I heard my spine crack. Squash mas, he laughed. You genius. I looked over at Brenda. She was storming toward her car, on the phone with her real estate agent. I heard her say the words property values and unlivable. I went home. I took off the robe. I put on my jeans and my gloves. There were weeds to pull. The tabernacle stood for 3 years. We fed thousands of pounds of food to the shelter. Eventually, the city changed the ordinance to allow community gardens in residential zones, mostly so they didn't have to deal with me anymore. I never did file for tax-exempt status. It seemed like too much paperwork. But every Sunday, Marcus brings the van. And every Sunday, we stand by the gazebo, eat fresh tomatoes like apples, and give thanks for the loophole. And Brenda? She moved to a condo. On the 40th floor. I hear she's trying to ban balcony plants. I might send her a care package. Amen, pass the ranch dressing.